It's on there.
Nice.
All right. Welcome, my friends. Welcome. We've got just
You're muted.
probably days you'd like to mute me more often, isn't there? Huh?
I can hear you now.
Yeah. You must not have heard that last statement, though.
I didn't. Why don't you repeat that for me?
So there's probably days you'd like to mute me, wouldn't you? Huh?
You know, if I could carry one of those little buttons. No, just kidding.
Uh-huh.
I love to hear you talk every day.
Yes, you do. I can only imagine. All right, here we are, my friends. We are live on a Monday morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Rebecca, what do you got for us today?
Well, are you going to make me co-host too, please?
Yes, I can do that.
Today we're going to talk about words matter. Words that we speak to others and words that we say to ourselves. You know, our self-talk in everyday life is huge. So that is the topic for today. And how we say things. I guess that's the other part of it, is how we say things, because I think people can interpret how we say things by how they see us, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So just, the whole, like you wrote it on Facebook, sticks and stones may break my bones, but they always say that words will never hurt me, and that is so not true. Words have a huge effect on how other people see us, how we see ourselves, and it just carries a lot of weight. So, yes, that was our topic this morning.
Okay, what drove you to choose that topic?
Mainly, a lot of these topics come from, for me personally, things that I work through and deal with, and my self-talk. We were listening to Ed Milet this weekend as we drove home, and a few of the pointers that he made about how we see ourselves and how even first thing in the morning, you get up and you look in the mirror, and if you look in the mirror and you're going, oh, wow, you look great today. Or if you get up going, wow, you look great today. How we speak to ourselves and what we say to ourselves has an effect on how your entire day is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
It has effect on how you communicate with others. When I'm feeling down, or if I'm feeling hard on myself, maybe I didn't get something done that I wanted to, and I'm beating myself up for it. I know communication between you and I is a little more rough, but so that's where this came from. Like I said, it's a lot of, I'm learning how to talk to myself better so I can work through things better, instead of telling myself I can't. Just even simply telling myself I can.
Have you ever set in on the lesson that we teach on the 3 most powerful letters in the English language?
I'm sure I have, but you might have to remind me.
The 3 most powerful letters in the English language create the most powerful word in the English language, which is H-O-W. How can I? When you tell yourself and you look in the mirror and you say, how can I make this an amazing day? You start to open up possibilities. You start to open up ideas. You start to open up the processes of thinking that require you to move in the right direction. How can I is an amazing sentence. Because when you say, can I do something, it's a yes or no answer, right? Can I do it? Yes, no.
Right.
And when you say, how can I, that requires process. It requires you to think into the steps. And that's something that we do with our clients. It's something that we do with everybody we work with. If there's a desired outcome, you ask the question, how can I achieve that? And the words do matter. One little simple word, how, completely changes everything in the picture, changes the whole perspective.
Right.
So,
And I think that, that carries over into our everyday business, because how we speak to ourselves affects how we carry on what we do during the day, what we say to others.
mhm.
Are we a negative Nancy, like I tend to get once in a while? Or are we uplifting? Are we talking down about other people to maybe gain something from somebody else? Are we, you always teach in sales, if going out and talking bad about the competition, that is not a way to to gain customers. So I think there's a whole dialogue of speaking.
So when you think about the whole idea behind, let's go back to what you said in the morning. When you wake up first thing in the morning, you look yourself in the mirror, you see that person, you have to start. Your day is only going to be as good as it is when it starts. And, all's well that ends well. The reality is all's well that starts well. That's just the way it is. All's well that starts well. And when you decide, you make a conscious effort to decide that today's going to be a great day, you can face anything in the world. You can face anything out there. But it can still be a very challenging day and still be a great day, depending on how you look at it. But part of the reason that you want to think that way, part of the reason that you're looking at the world from that perspective, is you got to think about everybody else that you're encountering, right? You try and look at it from the other person's perspective. If you wake up and you're looking at the day and you're struggling with the day, and you see the negatives right away, and you identify those right away, well, guess who else is going to identify that in you, right? When you're leading people, when you're working with your co-workers, with your team members, with your family members, when you're a part of that environment, you have to choose how you're going to speak to yourself, because you are, the way that you have spoken to yourself, the way you are seeing yourself, is the reflection that you're going to put out to everybody else. So you have to ask yourself, how do you want people to see you? How do you want people to see you? How do you want people to engage with you? How do you want people to respond and interact with you? And as you start to see that and think about how you want people to do things with you, you've got to be thinking about, am I portraying the person? Am I portraying the character that people are going to be able to respond back in a certain way to? If you're not portraying it, then how do you expect them to respond to it? And that's why the way that we speak to ourselves is so critical when we're heading out into the world, and the words we say are fundamentally, it's just fundamentally critical, because it's going to be how you respect others also. The way you're seeing yourself is how you're going to deliver to other people. If you're going to speak well and kind to other people, it's because you're speaking well and kind to yourself. You've learned how to do it. You've learned how to absorb that into your life so you can express it to others. All right, we have a handful of people on here this morning. Anybody have some thoughts, ideas? We'd love to have you guys give some feedback on this topic. I know some of you are running businesses. Some of you are in family businesses. A lot of you guys are in different positions in life. So what are some of the things that you have noticed in the space of words and the things that you say?
Morning, Kylan. It's Brad.
Hey, Brad.
Yeah, being negative can pull everybody down in a heartbeat. Rebecca, I like what you said. You talk to yourself negatively. It does not help the day go well. So I appreciate that. So being positive helps immensely.
Yeah.
That's an interesting statement, Brad, and sometimes we have to think there's all this talk out here about positive thinking, positive, this and that and the other. We have to ask ourselves a question. If we're intentionally not positive, what's the opposite, right? If you're not positive, by default you're going to be negative. Right, and it's an intentional action to be positive. It's easy to be negative. It's easy to find the negative. So yeah, that's a very, very good point.
I think, excuse me. if I wake up like this morning, I could not sleep. So I've been up very, very early. And if I'm focusing on the negative part of it, being tired, just snowballs the entire day. So then tomorrow I'm behind the 8 ball again because I've got to make up for the things that maybe I didn't get done today because I tell myself I'm tired. Tell myself that I can't get something done. And then, so it just kind of snowballs. And then the longer that you focus on it and the longer you do it, the more behind that you get and the more harder on yourself you get. So it does have a lasting effect. You know, you may think that, oh, tomorrow's a new day, we'll start all over. But if you get up in the morning and start thinking about the negatives again, it just snowballs, and it's so hard to recoup. And like I said, it'll have an effect on the people that you talk to throughout the day, the customers, the just conversations in general.
Mm-hmm. So let's think about those conversations. If you're a person in leadership, you're a person in sales, you're a person that's maybe managing a facility, which I know a lot of you guys are, that's on the call here this morning. We've got people that are in a lot of different walks of life that involve other people. So if you're speaking ill to yourself, and you know you're going to reflect to the world what you are to yourself, and if you're reflecting that out in a negative fashion, how in the world can you expect to get a positive outcome out of your business? There's no possible way that you're going to get a positive outcome when you're expressing negative input and negative feedback. And those are things that we have to be very aware of as leaders in our industry. When you pick up the phone, the way that you see yourself, this is one of the things that we teach in our sales training, is, you know, keep a mirror next to your phone, right? Keep a mirror on your desk so that when you look at yourself, do you look happy? Or do you look excited? Do you look, you know, alive? And the way that you speak to yourself when you're speaking on the phone, the way you're speaking to others, you want to remember that there's a reflection there. And if you see yourself while you're speaking on the phone, it does make a difference when you're calling people, especially people maybe that you've never met before. You're doing cold calls, you're doing even follow-up on support calls. The way you see yourself and the way you express yourself is going to make a difference on the other end of the line. So it's really important that we learn how to be excited. You know, be not on certain times, you have to control that emotion, control that excitement, but you have to feel like you want the other person to feel, like you have to express that. And that's something that is a learned art, honestly. It's
Well, you know, talking about having a mirror there, I'm going to have to really practice that, because I sit here and watch myself on these Zooms. And I don't critique how I'm doing things, but I can critique, oh man, my hair looks bad today, or my glasses, you know, or my frowny face that I'm not really frowny, but it just looks like it. Yes.
your hair looks
So
good.
I would have to practice a lot with the mirror.
Yeah, well, you're just being a woman. You know, it's like you're critiquing yourself all the time.
Did you just say being a woman? You know, the other part of this is words matter. How you say things really matters. There's a perfect example.
Yes,
I will tell you
yes, it
guys,
is. I'm
since
sorry.
it's all men on here,
I'm sorry.
I have more Hallmark cards from Kylan written in my head. You know, we always talked about, you know, if he were to find another wife, and he says, you know, the 10 personalities that you have are plenty for me. Yeah, you know, the Hallmark card writes itself. So words matter.
Yes, and see, no other woman has to worry about that.
But the part of that words matter, you know, we do a lot of teaching on the DISC, on the personality styles. And there are times being in business together with Kylan and I, Kylan being a very high I and me being a CSSC type person. And Kylan will say, hey, I need a flyer. And that's it. That's all he says. And so I will spend hours and hours and hours building a flyer because for me, I have to have it perfect. And then give it to him. And he's like, that really wasn't what I was thinking. But so words matter. How we say things to different personality types. Some of us like a little bit more clarity, a little bit more, being an S and a C, we like reassurance. And so how he says things to me, and he's learning, he's getting much better, but how he says things to me, there's times that if he just is like real short and sweet, I shouldn't say short and sweet, but short, that it comes off to me as being, what's the word I want to say? I mean, not mean, but just being unthoughtful. And he's not. He's not being that way, but that's the way I hear it. So the words that we say matter to who we are talking to. We have to learn who we are talking to on how they need to hear it, if that makes sense.
So one of the things though that we teach with the DISC is not just personality. If all you're really looking at is personality, you're missing a big part of the picture. A big part of what we talk about with the DISC as it pertains to this is behavior. So there's two elements. You've got personality and you've got behavior. When you're dealing with a specific personality style, there's standards that are set in place. But every personality has a behavior style. The behavior style is what is most important because that's what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. For example, if one of your employees wakes up in the morning and has an argument with his spouse before they get to work, well, guess what? Their behavior style is what you're dealing with. The personality style, you already know that, but now you're dealing with a behavior. And the words that go along with that behavior are critical, and learning to raise our awareness. If you remember going back to the personal development, the 6 steps for personal development, step number 1 is awareness. You have to have that awareness if you're going to be in personal growth and personal development, is awareness of who you are, how you're coming across, what you need to improve on, what character traits you need to be working on, because character weaknesses are things that you must improve on if you're going to increase in leadership and skill set, or your leadership skill set. So those are things that we really want people to be aware of. So what you're talking about, Rebecca, is the behavior, right? There's times when my behavior, because I'm an I personality, there's times when my behavior isn't conducive to your style of communication, of your style of connection. And that's what we have to be aware of, especially when we're working with customers, when we're working through opportunities with, maybe it's a dialogue conversation that you're having with someone in negotiations, right? Anytime you're negotiating with someone, those are environments that you have to be very, very aware of so that we can address the behavior and work with the behavior, not just the personality. Does that make sense?
Right. And you have to know your audience.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you have to know your audience. So.
Absolutely, and that's where the understanding your audience and being in tune with them is really, really critical. And it's one of those things that as you continue to learn and grow as a person, if you learn and grow as a leader, you're going to start to see how critical those things are. And it comes back to what you started this all with, Rebecca, are the words that we're saying to ourselves. The words that we say to us are some of the most important words that you'll ever speak to anyone.
Well, and when it comes into business and sales or something that you're doing, I know there's a lot of times that I critique myself when I get done and think, oh man, I shouldn't have said that, or that didn't sound right, and I've learned not to critique myself so much, but evaluate it differently, look at it differently, and maybe I should have said this. And so there again, it comes back to the words that you say, and how you say it too. You know what you mean and your intentions are good, but sometimes when you say them, it comes across as something different. So, so just evaluating yourself when you're done speaking to someone, not getting down on yourself. I beat myself up that sounded really stupid, and
But Rebecca,
usually it's at 2
so
o'clock in the morning. I do that.
So let me ask you though, when somebody starts, you take a new salesperson or you take somebody that's new in a position, and one of the things that is you're never going to be good right out of the gate. Nobody's good when they start. Nobody's good when they first get going. And if that's the case, if that's reality, which it is, nobody's good when they first start, then how do you speak to yourself in that environment? If you know you're not good, you do make phone calls, but your phone calls aren't good, what do you do with that?
Well, I think it's one of two things. I mean, practice. You have to practice. And it seems a little weird to do that sometimes, but just like any athlete or anything else, they have to practice every day to get knowledgeable and good at what they're doing. I don't know how long Usain Bolt, the runner, but they said that he practiced how many hours every day for how many years for 15 seconds of fame. It takes practice. So you have to practice and evaluate. I think you have to be aware of what you're doing and evaluate every time. Some people are natural schmoozers. It takes me a little bit more practice to speak to people because I get to be too much of a perfectionist. I want to make sure I'm saying everything the right way. I want to make sure that I sound good. But until I get out there and do it and start just stepping out of my comfort zone and practicing, it's not just going to happen.
So how do you practice? Let's wrap that up, and maybe we'll get some feedback here from the other guys too. How do you practice? Let's say you're a person in sales, you're a person in leadership, and you've got to practice your communication skills. Because to be honest, in our digital-driven world today, we don't practice the art of communication like we used to. So how do you practice the art of communication?
That's a good question.
Well, I'll give you one of my takes on it. And this is something that I still do today, and that is I will record myself when I'm in the vehicle, and when I'm driving somewhere, I will practice speaking about a topic, a subject, a product, an approach, an idea, anything that I have on my mind. I will normally record it, listen to it, record it, listen to it. I practice how I speak. I practice it. We're getting ready for a keynote that I've actually never done before. And in this keynote, we're going to be talking about some of the stories of our past and some of the things that we've gone through. And in this keynote, I'm already practicing. If I'm taking a walk, if I'm in a vehicle by myself or doing something like this, I'll take a segment of that keynote and I'll speak it into my recorder and listen to it. Because that's the only way that I'm aware of how I'm saying things. I'm aware of my inflections. I'm aware of my tonality. I have to improve my ability to speak. And the only way to really do that is to listen, increase my awareness. And by recording myself, I can increase my awareness on how I sound and how I come across. Though there are certain things, gifts that God's given me, the voice that I have, God's given me. There's not a whole lot. If you don't like the sound of my voice, I'm sorry. But I'm going to do my best to try and make it engaging. And it's not schmoozing, it's engaging.
Okay.
So anyway, that's one thing you can do. So anybody else who wants to share how they practice their arts so they can be a better leader, be a better communicator? Using words. What are some things that you do?
Colin?
David, how you doing, buddy?
I'm all right. It was not so much about practicing, but just going back to understanding the audience and how your words can be received differently. One of the things, I live in St. Louis, which is a blue island in a Red Sea, and then I travel around all over the country, mostly to I always deal with farming folk who have a different political view to those that around where I live. I come from Australia, which has got different political views to the US. And what you say if you say the same thing, exactly the same words, they're going to get received differently depending on your audience. And I'm not talking a conversation about politics. I'm talking a conversation about food production, about water usage, about those sorts of things. And they're going to get received differently because of just the vast array of views and opinions out there. And most people have very strongly held opinions, and so depending on where you're from, and it's tricky. And sometimes, I try and be sensitive to the audience, but sometimes you can get it wrong, not overtly, but just surreptitiously, and in how people view things.
Yeah.
And they might not say it up front, but it's in this world, it's pretty tricky because of such a division of views on things.
Yeah.
And so
Communication's only as good as it is received, right? It's not how you give it, it's how it's received. Do you agree?
yeah, absolutely. And every now and then you can get it wrong, but you do, as I said, it's not, you don't think you're talking politics, but just the political views on things. I guarantee you, if you have a conversation with somebody in the Central Valley of California versus somebody that lives down on the coast about water, they're going to have two different opinions, and you have to understand the audience for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Kylan learned that lesson once when he spoke to a group of college kids, and he told a joke that I told him that he probably should not tell because it went over really well.
If that would have been a room full of 50-year-old people, it would have went really, really well.
Right. And I'm like, and he told it, and it was like crickets. So.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing too, the age of the audience. So I talked about, the sort of city-country divide, if you will. But definitely the age of the audience has different views and different language too.
Yeah. David, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Randy, you were going to share something.
Yeah, if I might, I got two things, I guess. One thing I do to practice is, I'm very involved in my church and in various aspects, and in our denomination. I went to the Dominican Republic a couple of weeks ago, and for the first time, it was actually the same material, but I preached three sermons. It was the same information, but did it 3 times. And of course, preaching sermons is a little different than public speaking. It was a little unnerving because you want to make sure you're right. Giving somebody spiritual guidance is really not for the weak of heart. But then, I teach a lot of Sunday school classes. I teach discipleship training. I do those things to practice what I do, and it's a fairly, especially at my own church, it's a fairly tame and inviting atmosphere. Everybody's pretty forgiving if I would say something wrong or things. And then the other aspect is with typed communication, whether through email or texting. We kind of have a rule here within the company that you never assume emotion when getting a text or an email, because sometimes the four of us are scattered to the four winds, and so the bulk of our company communication is through written communications or typed communications. So we pretty much I teach everybody now, and I remind them, never assume emotion and never be emotional in your text. When I was in a master's program back, over a decade ago now, getting my MBA, we had almost an entire class on typed communication. And so it was very important at that time to understand how to do that, because you can say the wrong word typing much quicker than you can speaking, because people tend to assume emotion, and that can get you into a big trap if you're not careful.
Yeah, I know when I text Kylan in all caps, he thinks I'm yelling at him. I don't understand why.
Oh, yeah. There's very much an assumption in that text message, Randy. It's one of those.
Or even emails. When I send out an email, I'm kind of, Kylan always makes fun of me because I'm a details person. I like the details, but if I write an email, it's like short and sweet and to the point. And I have had to learn how to, sound a little bit, because like you said, the person reading that is like, wow, she's really kind of aggressive and abrupt. And that's not what I'm picturing it as. I'm picturing it as I don't want to bother you. I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but here's what I need, and here's how I need it, or something. So I have had to learn, especially, emails are the worst for me. I've had to learn how to, just be a little bit more polite, start out a little nicer, say, hey, good day, hope your day's going well, and make them just a little bit more like Kylan tells me, picture yourself on the other side of it, and how do you want them to perceive it.
No, good stuff. Well, we're a little over our time here. I do appreciate everybody jumping on. Rebecca, one thing that we may talk about in the future is received communication. That actually would be a really good topic sometime, on how people receive communication. And it's an element that's critical if you're going to be leading people or leading teams or being a part of any environment. I love what Randy said about speaking in church. That's a great place to step up. If there's an opportunity for something going on in your church, and it's an opportunity for you to speak or be engaging, step in and do it. It's a great place to practice. It's a great place to, prepare your heart, prepare your mind to do great things, and to, like Randy said, if you're going to give any type of spiritual guidance, you want to be in the truth. You want to be truthful in that aspect. So be willing to put yourself through the hard work of preparation. Be willing to put yourself through the hard work of preparing a presentation or a message that you can share with someone, because it allows you to practice the art of communication. And even when you think about receiving good text, there's probably no better way to learn how to write than even to go back into the scripture and see how it was written by so many different people in so many different ways. So there's things that you can learn by just engaging in and doing things like that, because it just helps your communication process. So let's put that down as a future topic. We'll talk about received communication. because that's only communication that is received is communicated at all. A lot of times we think because we've said something, we've communicated. That is not true. So that's something that we definitely want to continue to work through. All right. Well, thank you everyone for jumping on. Rebecca, what are your closing thoughts today?
Just practice, and your self-talk. Talk to yourself nicely.
Absolutely. All right, my friends, God bless, make it awesome, and find joy in the journey.
Record.